Okay. All right, that's done. Well, while we're waiting for Butch to join, I just want to welcome everybody. Thanks for attending our recreational bottom fish public meeting. This is for coastal recreational bottom fish. My name is Heather Hall, and I am the Region 6 Director, and I also work really closely with our Intergovernmental Ocean Policy team, and I am one of the director's representatives on the Pacific Fishery Management Council. I am here with Claudia Fries, who is our new intergovernmental staff person who is on the groundfish management team with Whitney Roberts. And I think Corey Niles will be joining us here. Oh, looks like he's on here. Corey also works in our ocean policy group. He's also a representative on the council for the director. And then we have Heather Fitch, who is new to WDFW. Heather Fitch is in intergovernmental ocean policy coordinator role. Some of you might recognize that title from Lorna Wargo. Lorna Wargo retired at the end of last year, and Heather is in that role. Only what's new about our team is we've got Heather in that intergovernmental ocean policy coordinator role, and Claudia in our, what is your official title?
I think it's Fishery Conservation and Management Specialist.
Very fancy, fancy
Yes.
title, and being on the GMT, so we're able to spread ourselves out a little bit, and Heather will be helping me with coastal crab and coastal shellfish stuff, but also tracking recreational bottom fish and halibut. So I think we've got a couple other folks from WDFW on the call. I know Erica Whalen from our ocean sampling team has joined us, and we've got Mark Iwasa from our communications program on the line as well. Am I missing anybody else from WDFW? Okay, it doesn't look like it. So we'll just go through and ask folks to identify themselves that are on the call. And this is a good opportunity to check your mic and all of that. Maybe let us know if there's a particular area of the coast that you're representing or interested in. And if you're just here for all of it, that's fine too. So I will start with the phone number. I'm going to go out a limb and maybe guess that the number ending in 5409 is Chris Solon. Do I have that?
That's correct, Heather.
All right.
Listening for Westport.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And then we've got A. Cunningham. If you're able to unmute and check your mic, say hello. There you go.
Good afternoon. Yeah, my name is Andy Cunningham. I fish off the North Coast recreationally. Just tuning in.
Oh, great. Thanks for joining us, Andy. And then we've got Butch Smith.
Hey, Heather, thank you. Butch Smith out of El Waco, but Pacific Fisheries Management Council, so interested in the Washington coast.
Thanks, Butch. And then Zach, sorry, I missed you when I was introducing the Fish and Wildlife folks. Then Celine Chan.
Hi, I'm just a high school student wanting to learn more.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. And then we've got Dave Johnson. Hi, Dave.
Dave Johnson,
North Coast Sport Rep.
Hi, Dave. Kurt Hughes is joining us.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Kurt. Larry Phillips.
Hey, everybody. Larry Phillips, American Sport Fishing Association, and interested in the coast.
Thanks, Larry. Paul
Welcome
Moranti.
also, just welcome Claudia and Heather.
Paul Moranti.
You are muted if you're speaking, Paul.
Well, I will just say, let everybody know that Paul is one of our Washington representatives on the Groundfish Advisory Subpanel. So there you go, Paul. You're unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm the most inept person with technology, so if you can hear me, that's great. Yeah,
You
I'm
got
the
that.
Gap representing the coastal charter fleet.
Thanks, Paul. Phil Anderson. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Heather and everybody. Welcome the other Heather and Claudia. Phil Anderson on the Groundfish Advisory Panel, also with the Westport Charter Boat Association.
Thanks, Phil. And Kit, I skipped over you too, even though we said hello when you joined the call.
Good afternoon. This is Kit with the Enforcement for Washington State.
Thank you, Kit. And Steve Westrick.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, yep.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, welcome to the new representatives also. And yeah, representing Westport.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's look at the agenda. So we got through number one. We thought we'd start with an overview of our bottom fish management process, and I think that'll be really helpful for folks that haven't attended one of these meetings. And then we'll go through our focus dock review, particularly looking at vermilion, rockfish, copper, and quillback, yellow eye, and canary. And then we will talk about the management and the proposed management alternatives and have some discussion. I think this is where we'd like to spend the bulk of our time with you all today. This is really the first meeting to kick things off during the spec cycle. We did get together last fall, but we're really getting into the management analysis and process here as we approach the March and particularly April and June council meetings for groundfish. So the Pacific Fishery Management Council is the regional group that manage fisheries in federal waters off Washington, Oregon, and California. We cooperatively manage with the Pacific Council with our state managed fisheries inside 3 miles. It does bring together our state, federal, tribal, and industry representatives, as well as the public. So as you heard me mention, I have myself and Corey Niles are on the council along with Butch. We've got Phil and Paul on the Groundfish Advisory Subpanel, Claudia and Whitney on the Groundfish Management Team. Kit often represents our agency on the enforcement program, and all of us make up that work that we're doing at the Pacific Council to set rules that support healthy rockfish populations and sustainable fishing opportunities. The council uses scientific information and input that we get from you all at meetings that we have that are hosted by WDFW, but also at meetings that are held by the Pacific Fishery Management Council. Okay, next slide. So this is a graphic that just helps with an overview of how all of these groups work together, including the National Marine Fisheries Service, who implements the regulations that are recommended by the Pacific Fishery Management Council. This lower box down here walks through some of those council advisory bodies that I mentioned. And then also wrapped into this is the general public, which we host through state-sponsored meetings. The council does have 5 meetings per year. Each meeting has a specific agenda and briefing materials. Right now, you can look on the Pacific Fishery Management Council's website and see all the materials that'll be discussed at the upcoming March meeting. The meetings are also live streamed if you can't attend in person, so you can listen in to the council's discussion. Okay, ready? And again, the state has management authority from 0 to 3 miles. Our regulatory approach is that we adopt our state regulations so that they conform to the federal rules that are adopted by National Marine Fisheries Service. Our state rules can be more conservative or more restrictive than the federal regulations, but they can't be more liberal. This approach really allows us to have a simple way to manage fisheries that occur in that area that overlaps both state and federal jurisdiction. And then as a management agency, we coordinate stakeholder input. And then we implement the management measures. And when we say management measures, really just referring to daily limits, area closures, depth restrictions, or non-retention. And then we track the harvest in season. We get monthly recreational bottom fish updates to make sure that we are not exceeding quotas, or our state quotas, excuse me. Okay. And this really is just a kind of a neat timeline for our groundfish management process. So you can see where we are now is in this timeline. January and March is where WDFW meets with stakeholders to discuss management alternatives. We are in the process of a 2-year cycle. And so what we're talking about are management measures or rules that will be in place starting in January of 2027 and go through 2028. So in April, let me skip back. The March council meeting is really just an update for this process. The council isn't typically scheduled to make any decisions on the groundfish harvest specification cycle. It's also important to note that March is an important meeting for our salmon management process, both March and April. Some of those conversations are happening already through other stakeholder and state tribal meetings, but the March and April meetings are part of the process that is often referred to as North of Falcon, but there are other work that the council is doing at that March and April meeting as well. Then in April, the council will adopt the final preferred harvest specifications, and that's really just simply catch limits that we'll be managing to, and preliminary management measures that align with those catch limits. After the April council meeting, we have a range of alternatives that we've looked at. We'll come back with this group here sometime in that April and May timeframe, and we start looking more closely at those range of alternatives and meet with you to talk about the specific alternative that we want to go to the council meeting with as a final preferred alternative. So like I said, there's a meeting here, but we'll have another opportunity to meet. And we can certainly, if needed, add meetings more than what's described on this timeline. And then in June, the council will take final action on those management measures. And it will be in January of 2027 when those rules are implemented through National Marine Fisheries Service, and the state will adopt conforming regulations. Yeah, next slide. So I can kick it off to Claudia here and she can start getting you into the details. Starting with our marine catch areas.
Yeah, we divide the coast for the ocean side of things into 4 areas. In the south, we have Marine Area 1, which is Columbia River, then Marine Area 2, which is the Westport area of the south coast, and Marine Area 3, which is the north coast, and that's Marine Area 3 and 4A, and then 4B is getting into the Puget Sound area, and we have different regulations for each of those areas. And here is an overview of what those current regulations look like. The overall bottomfish fishing season is the same. It starts the second Saturday in March and goes through the second Saturday in October. And then we've got 9 fish total bag limit, and within that 7 rockfish, and within that 5 canary rockfish currently, plus 1 cabezon and 5 additional flatfish. There's currently no retention of yellow eye rockfish, and copper, quillback, and vermilion are restricted between May and June. And then for each of the 3 different areas, we have different bottom depth restrictions. So in the North Coast, that's 20 fathoms out. There are certain limitations in what you can keep. For the South Coast, we have 2 different restrictions. There's the 30 fathom restriction, which is currently only operational in May. And that just means, and that's just for lingcod. So you can't retain lingcod in May outside of 30 fathoms. And then there's also the 50 fathom deep water lingcod restriction, both in the Columbia River and in the South Coast. And the exceptions for that deep water lingcod restriction are currently June 1 through 15 and September 1 through 30th. So during those weeks, you can go out and retain deep water lingcod. And the reason for those restrictions was to disincentivize folks from going out there and fishing, and incidentally catching canary and yellow eye rockfish. And with this slide, I just wanted to briefly show an overview of some of the species that are important to coastal recreational fisheries. We've got black rockfish, which is just the most commonly caught rockfish off the coast of Washington. And you can see in this plot here, there is a panel for each species. And on the y-axis, you can see total mortality, and on the x-axis year. And black rockfish is up here in the upper right corner. And the line represents the harvest guideline. And then the columns are what's been caught. And so you can see for black rockfish, we've been well below our harvest guideline. Lingcod is another important species. That one is caught in deeper areas. And you can see it's also one that has the most weight in terms of what's the total mortality for Washington. And you can see that the total mortality has been fairly consistent. And that's true of a lot of our species. If you just quickly take a look at all this, you can see that both for black rockfish and lingcod, total mortality has been fairly consistent. I'm highlighting vermilion, copper, and quillback here because we recently had changes in management for those species because we wanted to reduce mortality. So in 2023, we started prohibiting those species for retention between May and July. And you can see the effect of that here, especially for copper rockfish, where you see that drop off in mortality in 2023 when those rules went in place. And those 3 here are also part of complexes, but they have specific harvest guidelines within the complex. And the other thing I wanted to highlight here is that for all of the species for which we track our catch against harvest guidelines, the fishery is usually well below that. The only exception for that is vermilion, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then canary rockfish here, you can see, as you guys all know, in 2025, the harvest guidelines decreased sharply, and we exceeded them a little bit, and we'll talk more about that later as well. So for vermilion, coolback, and copper, I just mentioned we changed our management in 2023, and those changes were successful at reducing mortality. We were under a harvest guideline for all 3 species in 2025, and I wanted to point out that for vermilion, we're actually managing to a combined ACL between Washington and Oregon. And even though the Washington-specific catches are fairly close to the harvest guideline, as you can see at the bottom of this table here, the total mortality for both Washington and Oregon combined is fairly low compared to the harvest guideline, which is more than twice that total mortality level. So we are not in any danger of exceeding the Washington-Oregon ACL for vermilion, which is also part of a complex. Yellow eye rockfish is currently still prohibited, but a recent stock assessment concluded that the stock has recovered, and the rebuild declaration is currently pending. But once that declaration is made, we think that there will be some opportunity for retention, and we'll talk more about that later when we get to our management alternatives. But here I just wanted to show that we've been well below our harvest guideline over the last 5 years. And the plot on the right here is showing you total mortality again on the y-axis and year on the x-axis, and then that's broken down by area and colored by mode. So blue is charter and blue is private and red is charter. And the 2 lines that are drawn here represent when management changed. So in 2000, the bag limit went from no sub bag limit to 2 fish. And then in 2002, that the bag limit went to 0, so prohibition. And you can see here what's the most striking about this plot in my mind is the South Coast. So before yellow eye was prohibited, you can see that there was a large chunk of mortality for the charter fleet, and that really went down to almost nothing. And that just represents the extent to which the charter fleet has been able to avoid yellow eye and contribute to allowing that species to recover. On the North Coast, we see there's a larger part of the mortality that was due to the private mode, and those that mortality went down as well, but not as much, comparatively speaking. For canary rockfish, as I've already mentioned, the ACL and the harvest guideline went down drastically in 2025 compared to 2024, and you can see that in 2025 we did exceed that. The harvest guideline was 17.3 metric tons, and the total mortality was 22.7, so we went over by 5.4. And this plot just shows the cumulative mortality. So I wanted to highlight with this that by the time June is over, pretty consistently for the last 3 years, we've already gotten to 13 metric tons of total mortality. And then we can also look at total mortality by month and region separately. And what stands out here is, most of you already know this, but most of the canary mortality occurs in the South Coast. And this is also plotted out by trip type. And I'm only showing bottomfish, halibut, and salmon trip types here, which are the majority of the trip types that catch canary. And so you can see in this plot for the South Coast here, those center panels for the bottomfish only trips, you can see that the average mortality by month over the last 3 years, June and September really stand out, which are the 2 months when the deepwater lingcod closure doesn't apply. So you can really see that a good chunk of the canary mortality occurs in those 2 months, but the exact extent of it does vary from year to year. Okay, so so that was it for the review, and so now we're going to talk about the specifics, the specific management alternatives that we're considering.
Claudia,
Yes,
excuse me, do you want to pause and see if there's any questions about the
Yeah,
graphs? and,
absolutely.
Maybe before we jump into the measures?
That is a good call. Yes. Does anybody have any questions? And I'm happy to send out tables with more specific information and numbers for everything to those who are interested, or to the whole group. And I know a lot of you like tables. I've tried to put tables in. I personally really like figures. So we're going to do figures and tables, because I think the plots just allow you like a really nice visual of what's going on. And then the tables are of course great for having the specific numbers there. So some people are table people, some people are plot people. I'm hoping to have something here for everybody.
Looks like Phil has his hand.
Ah, yes, Phil.
Yeah, thanks very much for that overview. I guess one point of clarification that I think I have right is that in Westport, there are a significant portion of the charter trips that are taken once the salmon season opens are what we call combination trips. So ground fish and salmon.
Yeah.
When they are sampled at the dock, my understanding is that those combination trips, if they have salmon on board, are counted as salmon trips. And so looking at your graphic here and the canary mortality that is associated with salmon trips on the South Coast needs to have that clarification, I believe, when you're displaying this information. Those are not incidental catches of canary on a salmon trip. Generally, it's my belief that those are canary rockfish catches that are associated with the portion of the trip that targets on bottom fish rather than the portion of the trip that targets on salmon.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And thank you for pointing that out. I made the titles a little shorter so that there wouldn't be too many words. But yeah, you're right. So what I've labeled as halibut was both halibut and halibut salmon trips. And then the things that are labeled as salmon, you're right, are also combo trips. And yes, that the trip type that is recorded, there are some special rules about how many salmon have to be there in order for it to count as a salmon trip. But you're right that we don't have a specific category for bottom fish salmon combo trips in our data for the interview data. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, it's also interesting to hear again too that it's not, like you said, Phil, incidental retention while you're fishing for salmon. You're actually switching your targeting to get some bottom fish on your way in from salmon fishing, if I'm understanding that right.
Yeah, I mean, there's different strategies for different boats. Sometimes they'll go bottom fishing first and then spend the rest of the day salmon, or they may start salmon and then go bottom and then come back to salmon, or, there's any of those combinations that are regularly used by the charter fleet in Westport.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Erica, did you want to say that out loud, what you put in the chat?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just was clarifying basically what was already said, that yeah, if a boat targets salmon, even if they're unsuccessful, but then goes on to just catch bottom fish, it doesn't just switch to a bottom fish trip. It's still coded as a salmon trip.
Thanks for that clarification. If there are no other questions or comments at this point, I can move on. Okay, so the first proposed alternative that we have is regarding that deep water link cod closure. You can see in the plot here in red the outline of the current closure, and so there's this funky little shape at the bottom here, and that line is the division between marine areas 1 and 2. And so there is a discontinuity currently in the shape of that deep water link cod closure, and we're proposing to eliminate that by simply continuing that line down from marine area 2 into marine area 1. And we don't expect that there are going to be any large impacts on the species that we care about. It just should make it a little bit easier for folks to know where they're fishing and make the regulations a little easier as well. Then the next alternative is with regard to the 30 fathom link cod closure in marine area 2 in May. Specifically, we are proposing to eliminate that. And originally it was implemented to help reduce yellow eye and canary mortality. But we feel that it is no longer needed, and we would like to provide some additional fishing opportunity. Now, the impact of removing that is that we expect some of the shallower trips may shift into deeper waters. And so it is possible that we're going to see some increased canary mortality with this action, and how much really depends on what proportion of the effort shifts into deeper waters. And I put some numbers here for what I'm estimating. So with a 5% effort shift, we'll see a roughly 0.4 metric tons increase potentially, and with a 15% shift, we could see about 1.4. Those are just rough estimates, so we're not expecting a very large impact here on canary mortality from this action. The next alternative is linked to that one. So since removing the 30 fathom closure might increase canary mortality a little bit, we're also going to put one in that has the potential to decrease canary mortality. So this one is the deepwater link cod closure in marine area 1 and 2 is currently in effect all but June 1 through 15 and September 1 through 30th, and we're proposing to change that to have it be to have that area open instead of all of September, just from September 1 to 15. So I'd have it closed the second part of September. And so here is the opposite rationale of what applied in the previous, in that we're hoping to save some canary mortality because there's going to be fewer effort in those deep water areas where canary encounters are more likely. And we're estimating that we're going to save between half a metric ton and 1 metric ton, but that really depends on how much of the effort is going to take place in September, and that has been fairly variable over the most recent years with a downward trend. So 3 or 4 years ago, much higher proportion of canary mortality happened in September compared to the most recent years, but probably that's weather dependent to some extent. So yeah, we're expecting around half to 1 metric ton, but it could be higher. So overall, this alternative and the previous one will probably about cancel each other out when it comes to canary mortality.
Steve has a question.
And I see there is a question by Steve. Thank you. Steve, go
My
ahead.
comment that's a good update to get rid of that little box, because it was a very confusing little regulation, even for people that do it all the time. We were constantly asking, now can I go here? What can I do? So that's a good improvement to the regulations. So thanks for that, everybody, for making this happen.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Now the next one.
There's a couple more.
Oh, sorry. More questions and comments. Who was first? I don't
Looks
remember.
like Larry, then Phil.
All right, Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate the conversation here about how to save a half a metric ton of canary rockfish. I'm also remembering the conversations I've had with Heather and Corey and Phil and the conversations at the council level. That hopefully we're going to get some help in another area relative to the conservation of canary rockfish or lack of need. But is the way to view this, the lingcod restriction area at this point, is that really our focus on canaries, or is it a combination of canary and also yellow eye rockfish? I'm just trying to better understand,
Yeah.
what the target is here.
Yeah, definitely. So it's both. The only reason why I'm showing canary here is because we really don't have a way to estimate what the impact on yellow eye would be. And we'll talk about that more in a minute when we talk about yellow eye. But yeah, I don't have a good way to estimate that since it's been prohibited for 20 years. But with canary, we have numbers that we can look at to get an estimate.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front of everything.
No, you're
Thank you.
good. You're good. Thank
Thanks.
you. And then Phil?
Yeah, thanks. I think on the 30 fathom line, as things have progressed, changed over the years, that 30 fathom line, you have a greater impact. But particularly with the increase in the number of halibut days in May, that's occurred over the last several years, for some number of years, 3 to 5 probably. And then this year, where we're looking at having halibut open 4 days a week in the month of May, and in area 2, that it really only leaves, I think, 13 days when that 30 fathom line was going to be in place. So we're not anticipating a significant increase in canary or yellow eye, for that matter, mortalities. So I do think that similarly with Steve's comments about the red box there, this will help simplify regulations, make that 50 fathom or approximating 50 fathom line consistent throughout the time period, except for when the deepwater lingcod opportunity and the halibut days are open. We'll have that 50 fathom line in place the entire year. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I also think, we were advocating that last 2 weeks of September be closed last year because we were concerned that simply going down to 5 canary may not get us to where we want to be. So we're, when I say we, I mean our Westport Charter folks are happy to see. I mean, we hate to lose that opportunity, but at the same time, would much rather have those last 2 weeks in September not have opportunity for deep water, instead of having to consider something like a reduced bag limit, a further reduction in the bag limit. So all those things in our mind kind of balance where we're trying to get. And also just touching on Larry's comment about we're doing all this, trying to refine our catch down by a half ton here, a half ton there, when we got 60, 70 metric tons that are left on the table by the IQ fishery. So from a conservation perspective, we're really not contributing anything from that perspective with these small changes. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. Steve, I think that hand might be old, but if not, then go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, Phil, to your point of, half a ton, that's a drop in the bucket. You're absolutely right about that. And whenever we analyze these different alternatives for the purpose of that Pacific Fishery Management Council catch setting cycle, we have to talk about what we think the impacts will be, both on the fishery and on the fish. And so that's why those numbers are in there, even though they're insignificant in the grand scheme of things, for sure.
Yeah, I wasn't questioning why they were there. I understand why they're there, but
Yeah.
just putting them in context.
Yeah, heard. The next alternative that we're considering is yellow eye retention. As I mentioned earlier, we are expecting that rebuild declaration to be made, and then that means that there will be opportunity for limited retention. Now, of course, we want to be cautious. It's been prohibited for 20 years, and there has been significant behavior change, especially by the charter fleet, to avoid yellow eye. And we don't really know yet what that's going to do. You know, some folks might continue avoiding, some folks might avoid a little less, some folks might even target. And we just don't really know what the impact is going to be of allowing any amount of yellow eye retention. Now, we do want to provide opportunities for data collection for future assessments, but that also comes with the caveat that, you know, when you add new data streams to an assessment, you could see a slightly different outcome. We saw some of that for Canary, where initially the projections were pretty optimistic, and then once we started being able to collect data and add that, then things changed a little bit. So we definitely want to proceed with caution here and remember the lessons that we learned from Canary, while at the same time providing those fishing opportunities if we can. So it's challenging to project the impact of opening yellow eye back up. Like I said, it's been closed for 20 years, and we really don't know what's going to happen with behavior. And on this plot here, I just wanted to contrast and compare Canary and yellow eye. And in terms of management, they both have a similar history of when both species were prohibited. And then, of course, Canary has been open now for about 10 years, and yellow eye has not. Now, there are differences between these species, of course. We know that Canary school and yellow eye don't, so it's not exactly the same thing, but looking at Canary might give us some insight into what we might see with yellow eye. And so on this plot here, you can see with these lines here again, in 2000, the bag limit for both species went to 2 fish. Then yellow eye was prohibited in 2002, Canary in 2004. And then in 2017, we started opening Canary back up. And you can see that the total number caught, I wanted to make sure I mention this. This plot is showing not total mortality, but total number caught. And with the caveat that we did not have discards prior to 2003. But after 2003, it's both discards and retention. And you can see for Canary that the total number caught started increasing even before the fishery opened back up. But then, you know, in 2017, we had a 1 fish bag limit just in the South Coast and Columbia River area. 2018, a 2 fish bag limit in all areas. And then in 2019, which is that last dashed line here, the bag limit was removed for Canary. And so you can really see that the landings increased after that, or the number caught rather. And you can see the spike here in 2021 and 2022, which are the years I'm highlighting here right now. And that is when we opened up those yellow eye rockfish conservation areas off of the South Coast. And people were able to go in there and catch some pretty big fish there in those areas. Now, when we look at yellow eye, obviously it hasn't opened back up yet, so we don't know what's going to happen. But we can take the Canary data and look at a before-after comparison. So for these plots, for this first one, I'm showing the encounters, so the proportion of trips that encountered Canary, and I'm only showing bottomfish and halibut salmon trips here. And the red numbers are the years prior to reopening, and the blue numbers are the more recent years. And so you can see that there's a big jump in the proportion of trips that encountered Canary when it was closed compared to now. We're seeing at least a 3-fold increase here in encounters, and that represents behavior change. And then we can do the same thing with the number of fish caught on a trip. So on trips that did encounter Canary, how many Canary were actually caught. And you can see that especially for the charter fleet, that number was really, really small when it was prohibited. And then after it was allowed again, that number has increased and become like really quite variable. And so we can take that and say, okay, that's data that we have, that's information we have. And even though we don't know what's going to happen with yellow eye, we can use that as a bookend. And that's what this looks like when we do apply that as a bookend. So here in this plot, I'm showing the hypothetical bag limit analysis, and the red line at the bottom is what we would get if we just take the data that we've been collecting. So this represents yellow eye encounters with extreme avoidance behavior, essentially. And then the blue line is what we would get if we take that, but we inflate it based on what we saw for canary. And so that would be like a canary-like behavior change. And we don't expect really to see that. This is sort of a high bookend. And you can see there's a good amount of uncertainty here. That light blue shaded area represents the uncertainty in this. So the take-home message from this, though, is that our harvest guideline that we might see if we allow canary harvest would be either 17 metric tons or 22 metric tons. And the take-home is that all of this is still well below that harvest guideline. So with a one fish sub bag limit, if we don't assume any behavior change, which we don't think is realistic, we're looking at about 2 metric tons of mortality. And under canary-like behavior change, which we also don't think is going to happen, we're looking at 11 metric tons. So probably what we're going to see is somewhere in the middle. And if we make a simpler assumption and say that simply mortality is going to double, then we're going to look at 6 metric tons. Wow, I just got a frog in my throat. That's unfortunate. Okay. And then the other option that we were asked about at the last public meeting was a one fish bag limit only on halibut days. And under that we would probably see even lower. Wow, my voice is going away. That is that is terrible. I hope you guys can still hear me. I'm gonna just try to shout. So if we do a one fish bag limit only on halibut days, then under no behavior change, we would expect about a 1 metric ton total mortality, and under canary-like behavior change, perhaps 5 metric tons. And as Phil pointed out earlier, the number of halibut days keeps increasing, and so the more halibut days we have, the less of an impact it's going to have to allow retention only on halibut days.
So if I can, Claudia, so we don't think that the canary-like behavior change would apply just because of the way the fish are in the non-schooling, and that's the reason for that.
The non-schooling is a big reason. The other thing is that generally we don't see this behavior change happen from one year to the next. So what the plots I was showing with canary was showing the last 3 years, which is several years into reopening. So I think both because behavior change tends to be a bit more gradual, and because of the schooling, because of the schooling properties of the fish, those are the two reasons why I think that this is a high bookend and probably not very likely. But then again, behavior change is difficult to predict, so we never know what's going to happen. And I see a question here from Dave.
Yeah, thanks. On your halibut days only, we talked about at our last meeting just the month of May, or you got it for the whole season?
That would be for the whole season.
Okay, thanks.
Phil and Larry. Phil first, I think.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for this. I would really be interested in what some of the charter captains have to say about this. When I think about yellow eye, I mean, I think a lot of folks know where these are at. I think that they could target them much easier in some instances than canaries that move around. I would be really I would be, I mean, my recommendation is we be extremely cautious. I don't think any of us want to affect our deep water lingcod fishery and our halibut fisheries. And I mean, I know you guys are thinking about that. You mentioned that we're still significantly under allowable catch, but I'd love to hear what some of the charter captains that have been out there for lots of years and know if they wanted to go target yellow eye, how easy that would be. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. We were also very interested to hear that. So anybody has some thoughts on that? We got lots of hands up in the air. I think Larry was next.
That was Larry.
Oh, that was
That
Larry. I'm
was
sorry.
Larry.
My
Yeah.
bad. I don't know your voices yet. I will learn.
Oh, so this Phil. I Well, first of all, I just think it's I don't know what to say about the fact that the potential that our harvest guideline for yellow eye and canary is the same as almost reaches a level of absurdity. But so there's a number of us on this call that lived through the rebuilding of yellow eye. And I'm guessing that none of us want to go through that again. The restrictions in area 2 were bad enough, but the restrictions up in area 3 and 4 were horrible for the people trying to fish up there. And to do anything that is anything out of the very precautionary zone in terms of allowing retention, from my perspective, is a mistake, times 10. So I don't. I like Larry, and I'm hoping, like others, want to be very, very precautionary here. Let's take a baby step and see how it goes. I appreciate all the work that you did going putting these simulated effective behavior change together, but I'm not at all comfortable with moving forward, assuming that those are correct. So if there's some one fish bag on a subset of days, whether it's maybe it's the halibut and the deep water days as the proposal is in terms of those being reduced down to a 30 for the year, something like that, I might be able to support, but anything more aggressive than that, and I will stand in strong opposition.
Thank you, Phil.
The next one is Butch, then Dave.
Heather and Claudia, thank you for your great work so far. Well, I'm one that's come from the abused child era, and like Phil, maybe even a little more conservation minded on this one, or a little more time before we open it up. You have behaviors, we get one on a halibut day, but then all of a sudden you have people feel that they have to catch one on a halibut day. And that changes the whole thing, because then you start having high grading, you start having, almost a targeting, even though it's one fish. I just want to make sure we've got some years that we're out of this box before we do it, because, I stepped away from the bottom fishing game a long time ago, but I remember catching yellow eye, and those things will bite until they're extinct. And so I am of the one of probably more caution than others on this one. It was a brutal experience when we had to go through this to get where we are now, and I'd hate to. I know we're using the best of science we have, but I just and I know you're not rushing. The state's not rushing anything. I mean, the numbers say what they say, but I feel that we might be rushing things a little bit on this one, for the mind of status quo and till we've got a couple years of this under our belts going in the right direction. So that's from my perspective. Thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? When you say a couple of years of this, what do you mean?
Couple more years of no retention, just to make sure that things are going in the right direction. The stocks are still going up. I mean, we opened the other one up thinking that we could, Katie barred the door, and it kind of, we opened up new areas, and anybody that had a hook on their line could catch those other ones that are orange, and now we're kind of watching those again. So it just, it just has the chance of just affecting everything we touch, and including Nia, I harken back, Nia Bay closing down during salmon season for a high yellow eye catchback and on the severe closures. So I just like to make sure we're out of that era for sure before we're living fine without them right now. And I just would hate us to jump in a little bit premature. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Dave, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm in agreement with everybody. We talked at the last meeting, if we needed the data, and I've talked to all the charter boat guys up on the North Coast and quite a few of the recreational guys. And I guarantee you, if it's open on the North Coast, you're going to have 90% or better of every boat fishing offshore coming back with a full limit of yellow eye. We've been sending descenders down to save these fish. And if we don't go real cautious, like we talked about, maybe just doing it the month of May, that gave us 15 days of data on the yellow eye up off the North Coast. And I would hate to go any more than that. I'm even scared to go 15 days because I know guys are going to go, they're going to catch them. We encounter them out there on deep water days all the time. And we, have descenders hooked up on our downriggers with 20-pound balls to send them big bastards back down, and they're going to be keeping them. So thanks.
Okay, so I'm hearing maybe add an option to retain only in May.
Only on halibut days.
Only on
Yeah.
halibut days in May?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct, because that's 15 days on the North Coast.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
Thank
I'd
you.
hate to go more than that. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's Steve.
And Steve, yeah.
Hi, you guys. I totally agree. Larry said some great things, and Phil and Butch and Dave. I'm a harvester. I like to catch fish, but if it opens up, it's like what Dave said, there will be targeting. Even not necessarily just in deep water. People, skippers have been here for a long time. They might have little places they could catch them inshore even, but baby steps is really important. I totally agree with that, but I'm not sure what the baby steps are. You kind of asked Dave pointed question. I hope that, which we have not done, I'm hoping our Westport guys, we have a little meeting and maybe, come up with maybe a loose suggestion for down the road, but the baby steps is really important. We don't want to go through what we did years ago.
Mhm.
So I appreciate this conversation. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Steve.
That's Corey.
Yes, Corey.
Yeah, sorry, I had to agree to accept the recording here. So, yeah, no, thanks, good comments, everyone. But like Larry said, and Claudia, Claudia put these, this is a lot of work what she did here, but I don't think any of us believe either of those lines of like if we had a bag limit, for example, of 7, that it would be the same as a bag limit of 4. So we're like, and like Heather said, we'll have more meetings before April probably if people are interested. But I think the other part, like we learned with Canary, is we also want to probably show what the fishery could do for the future of, hey, more realistically, of if we let everything go, if we did have a bag limit of 3, what would it look like? Not that we would ever go there, but I think there might still be benefits to to showing that. And so maybe for our next meeting, like, yeah, why I think that blue line is even low. If but so ideas on like what Larry was asking about, people do know where they are, and how many percentage of the trips we do, so on. So yeah, I'll stop there, but I just think that's kind of something we should also think about of showing people what a less restrictive fishery would look like more realistically.
Butch.
Just the one other thing too. I mean, I don't know what the other states are conniving right now. I just got my council book, and I've been looking at other stuff, but we're kind of seen as, I guess, the leader in smart bottom fish management. And I hope that the other states aren't, Katie bar the door, here we go, ride 'em cowboy type approach. I don't think California is there, and I'm not thinking Oregon is either, but I think we want to collectively put our heads together, so we are once again leading the issue on this thing. So we, like I said, I just kind of look at it not only as state, but as leaders of the West Coast on this issue is going to be important also. So I just thought I tossed that into, I forgot to say that. So thanks for following me, Claudia.
Thank you, Butch.
I just want to acknowledge one of the comments in here from Sam Plumpkin. And Sam, I'm sorry I missed you when I did introductions. Apologies for that. But also something to think about if it might be an option that we could use some kind of a catch record card or an annual limit for yellow eyes, something that's also an idea to think about. How do we keep this in the box in a way that feels comfortable? I agree. I remember feeling this way and having these conversations with Canary about how do we open the door slowly in a way that reflects our conservative nature in Washington, and the hardship that was on the backs of the stakeholders, to operate fisheries inside 20 fathoms from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and work ourselves out of that. So really appreciate the ideas here. And yeah, just wanted to acknowledge that comment. Thank you, Sam, for putting it in the chat. It looks like Phil has his hand up again. Phil? Thanks.
You, Heather.
Yeah, I'm sorry to do it. I have a second comment, but I feel like we're a long ways from having any synergy around where we want to go with this. I mean, on one hand, I'm going to have a hard time supporting a 1 fish bag limit being in there for the season. Then I heard Corey say, well, maybe we ought to have one that's for 3 just to see what might happen. And then there's others of us that are on the opposite end of the spectrum. So I'm just hoping that we can have some additional time to think about this and make sure that we do the right thing here. Thanks.
Definitely more time.
Yeah, we've got, a number of competing objectives going on here we want to provide for some data for future assessments. We want to, like Corey was saying, we need to keep in mind the whole allocation thing and looking at what does each state need. And then, of course, we, like you guys have all been saying, we want to avoid harming the resource to the extent that we need more restrictions. So it's not an easy situation, and we definitely have to do some more thinking there. Corey?
Yeah, no, I just want to clarify. I mean, I don't think anyone wants to treat, but I hear people saying, like, if we gave, let's just say, picking a line on that, if we picked a bag limit of 4, do we really think it's going to be less than 15 metric tons of yellow? I don't, my gut tells me it would be a lot higher than that. But so do we really believe that? And just giving, I hear a lot of skepticism. And is there a way we could, maybe I'm wrong, maybe that is the right amount, but I think the number could be a lot bigger if we did something like that. And is there a better way to show that?
Yeah. Larry?
Yeah, so I'm wondering so we have, obviously we're encountering yellow eye now, and you showed that relative to the release fishery, but I'm wondering what mortality rate are we applying to an encounter of a yellow eye right now that's released? And it's not going to change angler behavior of going and seeking out rocky structure to try to find yellow eye, but I'm just wondering if the cost is you know the cost of the fishery, if we're already having a 50% release mortality rate that we're applying during halibut seasons, if that concept that Dave, talked about of 15 days or whatever we're open in May, it doesn't cost us every fish that, it's not an additional 100% of what's caught and retained if we're already having some costs associated with release mortalities. And maybe we can talk about that later. The thought came to my mind now, and I'm just wondering how this all connects to each other.
Yeah, that's a valid point. The release mortalities that are assumed at least differ by depth and by whether or not folks use a descending device. But the deeper you get, the higher those release mortalities are going to be. And ideally, we would allow folks to just retain that incidentally caught yellow eye without incentivizing any amount of targeting. But like you guys have already said, that's probably going to be difficult to do because some folks are just going to go ahead and target anyway, even though that's not the intention of having a one fish bag limit. But yeah, that is a valid point. Any other thoughts or comments on yellow eye? Alrighty, the last thing that I have to talk about for today is canary. And we already talked earlier about how we exceeded our harvest guideline in 2025 by 5.4 metric tons. And we expect that future catches are going to be similar to the last couple of years in the absence of any changes to management, which means we would also exceed our 27 and 28 harvest guidelines most likely. And you guys have brought up the flexibility proposal, and most of you know about this. For those who don't, WDFW has put forward a proposal to increase basically flexibility in yellow eye management. We know that the non-trawl sector does not have 100% attainment, like the commercial non-trawl doesn't catch its full harvest guideline. We also know that the trawl sector does not have 100% attainment. Canary in the trawl sector is just insurance, essentially. Folks are not targeting it, but they're also not necessarily fishing it. They're sitting on it and keeping it in the back pocket in case they have a lightning strike tow. So all of that combined means there's under-attainment of canary with respect to the ACL that is significant. And the question is whether we can change the way that we manage a little bit to allow the sectors that need it to take advantage of that. And that proposal is not part of the regular spec cycle. So we are advancing that, and the council is going to be talking about that, but that is happening parallel to the management cycle that Heather was describing earlier. And the reason for that is that some folks don't think that this counts as a standard regular management action. So the only things that we're supposed to be doing with specs is routine management. And some folks believe that this canary flexibility proposal does not qualify as routine management because it would essentially, be planned allocation exceedance. And so we are hoping that that's gonna move forward. but we have to proceed with providing options to the council in case it doesn't. And so that's what this is about. So our harvest guidelines for 27, 28, depending on what alternative the council chooses, is going to be somewhere around 19 metric tons or 21 metric tons. And our catch currently is 22.7. So we have a couple of options that we can put in to the document to bring down canary mortality. I'm showing here a table that is a bag limit analysis, and it's showing it by region and then also the total of what we can expect. And then here is that plot again that you saw earlier that shows on average when most of the mortality for canary occurs. And just wanted to throw that out there and get people's thoughts on what sorts of alternatives we can put into the specs document to help bring down our expected canary mortality. And yeah, I know nobody wants to see that bag limit be reduced, but we're going to have to put something in there, like I said, because that flexibility proposal is outside of that process. And I put together a couple more slides here to look at the bag limit in the South Coast charter fleet in particular. So these plots are showing how many trips are estimated to catch their bag limit per angler over the years, with that top row representing 2017 when the bag limit was 1 fish. And again, we're looking at bottomfish, halibut, and salmon trips with the same caveat as what we talked about earlier of what these trip types mean. So you can just see that as the bag limit increased from 1 fish to 2 fish to 7, gradually over time, we saw more trips catching 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fish per angler. And that the number of trips overall that caught any amount of canary has ranged between 30 and 40% of the total charter trips in the South Coast since it reopened. And then in more recent years, now in 2025, that bag limit was reduced to 5, and you can see that effect here in the plot, where the number of trips estimated to have caught more than 5 fish declined compared to previous years. You can also again see the effect of opening those yellow eye rockfish conservation areas in 2021 and 2022 in an increased number of trips that caught 5, 6 or 7 fish per angler. And then here are some percentages. So these are averages between 2023 and 25. So between those years, 36% of trips caught canary. Of those, 73% caught 3 or fewer canary per angler, and 5 or more were caught for 87%, and that's only for 23 to 24, because then in 25 we reduced it. So the number of trips that would be affected by bag limit reduction can be seen from this. So for 3 or fewer, it would be 27% of trips. For 4 or fewer, 18%, and for 5, it was 13% that were affected, were affected by that. And that's all I have on this issue. So I'm curious to hear people's reactions, thoughts, feedback. I can go back to this guy here. Corey, kick us off.
Yeah, well, people aren't maybe thinking, but I just was I don't know if Paul or Steve were willing to explain, but I know what much of the, and I've asked Phil too before, but that difference between going from below 4 or 5 canary and the importance of that for certain charter trips you take, and that's kind of a nuanced thing that's hard to quantify, but I think it's helpful for me to hear how you view the importance of those types of trips. And
Yes, Phil.
Well, I can take a crack at it if Steve, I mean, Steve would be the best one. Not with no disrespect meant for anybody else, but I was trying to talk with Corey a little bit about this earlier today and why, 5 Canary is kind of a significant number, and why dropping below that, while the graphics suggest that it doesn't affect too many people, and I don't have any reason to doubt that. But particularly on the deep water halibut, as well as the halibut trips themselves, and I'm speaking primarily for area 2, that, this your fishing strategy when you leave in the morning, you're leaving at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, you're getting back 3 o'clock or so in the afternoon, so you have about 10 hours to do your business, and you got 2.5 to 3 hours running each way, so there's about 6 of it is gone. So you got about 5 hours to of fishing, and and to be at a point when you're done where you're going to send your clients home happy. And so happiness is 2 lingcod and 5 canary, is that sends home a happy person. Halibut and 5 can sending them home with 5 canary, that's a happy customer. But if you have a situation where you're catching fewer than that in terms of canary, then you're confronted with the potential of having to go look for something else, like yellowtail rockfish, for an example, which generally involves going, running to a different area. They're not always in the same place, so finding them, going to the area, finding them, fishing, and hoping that you're successful. Whereas if you're successful and you have a couple lingcod and 5 canary on a deep water trip, you're good. You don't need to go anywhere else, or you don't need to get those other couple rockfish. People are happy. So would some people be happy with 4? Sure. But I think our guys have found that 5 and a couple lingcod on a deep water trip is kind of a sweet spot that sends everybody home happy. If you're halibut fishing and you can go in and get 4 or 5 canary to go with those halibut, you're in a sweet spot. Everybody's going to go home happy. And the other piece is, again, you got about 5 hours of fishing time, and if you got 12 to 14 people with you, 5 hours isn't as long as you might think to try to be successful. So, that is my best attempt to try to explain why we've been advocating as much as we can that we keep that canary bag limit at 5, because of the overall strategy that we have, sending people home happy. I'm sure Steve will augment what I said.
Thanks, Phil. Steve?
Yes. Phil described it very well for me. Thanks. Appreciate that. 5 is, that's a good, like he said, 4, probably live with it, but 5 is just a sweet spot. That's not that many fish on a charter trip that costs $300 or $400, 2 lingcod and 5 other fish. It's not too little, it's not too much, it's kind of in the sweet spot. And I would really appreciate it if the sublimit could stay at 5 canary. And plus the fact we've offered up not going the last half of September, so maybe we'd get a little savings there. I've heard some rumblings in other fisheries. There's some allocation of canary that's not being utilized, and yet we're like really kind of not fighting over the crumbs, but we're really worried about it. But that there might be some other flexibility out there. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I really hope we can maintain the 5 limit. And plus, you might know this. I didn't study all your graphs that hard, but the the deep water fishery, it was so super popular in 2020, 21, and your graphs show that. Well, the novelty has worn off a little bit from a lot of people. It's just like evolution. So it's not like people, it's not like, there's a gold rush out there to still go get these fish. It's pretty managed, under control. It's not, I don't think, going to be overexploited. I don't think you're that 22 number. I think what we caught last year, that could even come down some more, and especially if we didn't fish the last couple weeks of September. So I'm hoping that we don't have alarm bells really going off and taking extra regulations that we don't really need to. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents, and appreciate the discussion, just like for yellow eye. Very, very, very important for all the wreck fishers, really. Both of those species, all of the groundfish species, really. So thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Steve. Barry?
Yeah, so it's encouraging to me, and I'm sure everyone on the call, to hear that, we're talking about some in-season management, potentially some flexibility, working through cross-sector to to address the overall TAC and how we use it, and make sure that we're addressing conservation. And certainly let me know and others how we can help with this as we move forward. I completely agree with Phil and Steve. I think the 5 fish is is kind of the minimum. I think one piece of this we haven't talked about yet is, Phil mentioned it. Folks will catch their canaries. Hopefully maybe they catch a yellowtail before they catch all their canaries, and they can round out their 7 fish bag limit. But maybe it's me. I'm not very good at looking at my fish finder and off the Astoria Canyon and determining which cluster of suspended rockfish are canaries or yellowtail. But I'm worried that a bag limit lower than 3, lower than 5 will result in, folks continuing to fish to try to find yellowtail, and that could result in, mortalities. These things are extremely distended when you get them up. I don't know what the mortality rate is relative to other rockfish, but they don't handle barotrauma well. So I think that's part of the conversation that we have is what would satisfy the folks on the water relative to the need to go move after they catch their canaries to try to find something else to round out I think, as Phil put it, happiness. But my 2 cents. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. That really helped lay it out. Steve has another thought.
No, yeah, I just appreciate what he said. That's true. If we, like Phil laid it out, if we lucked out and got 2 around on a lingcod and we moved for canary, if we got 5 canary, we are super happy. As a matter of fact, my son, my deckhand, when he keeps the counting, when we're even getting close, and if it slows down, he might say, "Dad, we're in good shape." It's not like we have to overdo it sometimes. So, but if that number was lower, then you're going to cause a different fishing pattern and maybe more overall fish than you really need anyway. But anyway, okay, thanks for the discussion.
Thank you, Steve. Paul?
Yeah, not to get too complicated, but I thought if you go below 5, you use your utility more like in reference what Steve and Phil are saying. And one scenario could happen, you're trying to get lings. Ling cod are biting okay, but not that great. All of a sudden, a deckhand comes up and says, "Hey, we got our 3 around on cans." You're not quite done with the lings. Now what are you going to do? So now you got to move and move away from where you're probably going to get your lings if you had more room for your canary bag limit. So, I mean, just another thought where the importance of that 5. And it's true. I've been out with the guys recently, and when there's an attainment of 5 around on canaries, whether you're halibut fishing or lingcod fishing, everybody's happy. You're good. So I just thought I'd throw that kind of situation in also.
So is canary just one of the easier species to catch out there in those deeper waters?
I never say easy. I'll bite you in the butt every time.
Fair. I guess it's just one of the more readily catchable. I don't know how to say easy in a way that is not well, relatively speaking. So I guess, I mean, what else other than canary? I guess yellow eye, yellowtail, lingcod. What else do you guys catch out there?
Primarily yellowtails.
Okay.
Occasionally we'll run into widows, which are not really sought after, but you will catch widows here and there. But the canaries are really obviously beautiful, crowd pleasers. But the other main rockfish out in the deeper waters, the yellowtails. So, and
Right.
if it happened to be really poor on both, you might have to run all the way in close for black rockfish, which that does not happen very often, but occasionally. Primarily, it's the canary and the yellowtail that would go along with either the halibut or the lingcod.
Thank you. Well, other than a bag limit reduction, is there anything else that you guys can think of that we could put into this document to reduce the number on paper? And again, this is not saying that that's going to be the preferred alternative. We just need to have an option of something that that gets our projection below the harvest guideline, and hopefully the flexibility proposal will move ahead and we won't have to worry about it. But I'm just looking for you guys to tell me what would be more palatable than a bag limit reduction. Phil.
So, I think I can say this for at least Steve and Dave and maybe Butch and myself and maybe Larry and Paul. We didn't know we were having this. We didn't know we were going to be asked for ideas today on ways to reduce our mortality on canary. We knew that we were over a little, what I'll characterize as a little bit, but we did not know that the department was going to be asking us to come up with alternatives to reduce. And so, and yeah, the bag limits, maybe the most straightforward one place to go. It might even be the easiest to analyze. Not that it's easy. So, it's my understanding from what Heather said, Heather Hall said at the start, was that you, the department, needs to have something to put in for the briefing book for April, and that's when additional alternatives would be put in play. So I'd ask you to give us a little bit of time to huddle up and think about this a little bit. I don't want to throw something. I have a couple ideas. I don't want to throw them out right now without talking to a few people from the different parts of the coast, as well as a couple the people here in Westport. So that's my request is, don't ask us to come up with something today. Well, you've already done that, but that's okay. But give us a little bit of time I know the briefing book deadline is probably right about the time the March council meeting is over, would be my guess. So we will try to get something back to you here in the next 10 days. And if for your consideration, but I'm really apprehensive to try to just come up with something on the fly here right now without having the opportunity to talk to other people.
That is 100% understandable, and yeah, absolutely fine. I did not need a fully fleshed out proposal or even, or even an answer. I just wanted to put this on your radar to think about, and yeah, absolutely. Please have your conversations and then let us know. And Heather had something she wanted to add as well.
Yeah, but you teed it up really nicely, Claudia. I just wanted to say, I think Claudia did a really nice job of putting this information out there. And again, it's really just to spur some thought at this moment, not to say anything you'd like. But maybe you have a different idea, or maybe something comes to mind next week that we could look at and where we could dig a little deeper in the data or whatever. That's the benefit of having the meeting here now, even before the March council meeting. We're just getting it updated, and it'll give Claudia time to do more work and think about it as well. I also wanted to say too, just as a reminder, when we went through the last specs, we found we were in a similar place, right? Except at the time we really wanted to put a proposal together that would get us, I don't remember if it was 5 or 7 metric tons for Washington of canary rockfish, and we didn't go in that direction, but I did, we knew that a 5 fish bag limit, this is exactly where we expected to be. This is exactly the analysis that Lorna showed us, but we also didn't want to drop below a 5 fish bag limit, and we didn't. Much of that was with, even though we didn't put a vote out there for more canary for Washington, we did have support from Oregon and California to support us in a recommended final preferred alternative that was 5 fish, not something that would on paper be below our harvest guidelines. So again, nothing's carved in stone, and I appreciate the conversation that Claudia is referring to that's going on the side. We've really, Corey's helped, I think, people think about how can we be more flexible with the ACL for canary? How can we utilize some of that ACL that is not being attained economically when we're putting it out there, the hardship that a 4 fish bag limit has, so that we aren't 5.4 metric tons over our Washington harvest guideline when there's 64 metric tons of it available, and we're doing it in a way that actually tries to find that flexibility for all sectors, is what we'd really like to see happen. I mean, that makes a lot more sense. And the analysis should show that's the best way to use that ACL. So anyway, thanks again for the conversation and thinking about these ideas, and we're really look forward to getting back with you and penciling out some alternatives.
Well said, Heather. That's all I had. So if there are other questions or comments about anything that we've talked about so far today, we can talk about that. Yeah. And we will have additional opportunity to get together and discuss ideas. We are nowhere near picking any preferred alternatives. We're just wanting to make sure we have the right the right options in the bag at this point. And there's still going to be opportunities to add more, even, after the upcoming council meeting. And it's expected that we will.
Mhm.
Bill,
Just one, I was looking at any issues, species not addressed here, I'm just wondering, and this isn't, I'm not suggesting we talk about it now, but if there are any issues associated with widow, I was looking at our catches, I think they're between 2.5 and 6 metric tons or something like that the last 3 years in the Washington recreational fishery. But if knowing that ACL is likely to drop, have the bottom fall out of it, if there are any issues for the recreational fishery, when you know that, give us, let us know so we know what we might have to be facing there.
Okay.
will do. Thank you. Corey?
Yeah, we could get more details, but I did look that up after talking to you today, and I was just about to get the total, like just not the recreational fisheries, but the commercial. I bet with the even under the restrictive ACOs, there's like 300 metric tons for the non-trawl sectors. So we can get the details, but I think, yeah, Washington's only been catching, like you said, very little, but I got to check out the commercial. But yeah, with the 300, I think I can remember Lorna saying we should be okay, but definitely can get you that more specifically. And since have the mic, it's yeah, and I think, yeah, Claudia, on the sharing the ACL more flexibly idea, Claudia articulated what the potential opposition is, and it's but people have been saying 60 metric tons have been left unfished, but I think for 2025 it's more like anywhere from 125 to like 170 metric tons that are left. And so we're this purposely going over your allocations is kind of, and we can talk about this more for our March and April delegation meetings. But yeah, so there's a lot more, like it's 100, more like 150 metric tons that IFQ sector did not catch this year. And then off the top, like research and other sectors, there's at least probably 20 more there. So the other thought I left out is, so yeah, showing these other ways that we would have to maybe do to reduce the bag limit or do whatever to reduce canary, then it really makes it like, I think people will start to see why would we be doing these additional restrictions when there's so much left.
Good point.
Mhm.
Any other questions, thoughts, concerns?
Good job, Claudia.
Way to go, Claudia.
Yeah. You up to speed really, really fast, in my humble opinion.
Yes, she did.
I am still learning, and I know all of you guys will help me fill in my gaps over the next months, but I'm trying.
Whether you need the help or not, we're going to help you, Claudia.
Excellent, very good.
You're doing great, Claudia.
See everybody in Sacramento.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
everyone.
Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Good job.